Picture this. It's 6 in the morning, the kitchen is quiet, and you pour yourself the same glass of milk you've been pouring for the last 30 years. It feels safe. It feels healthy. It feels like something your mother taught you to do for strong bones and a long life. But what if that one daily habit, the one you've never questioned, is quietly making your kidneys work a little harder every single morning? If you're over 50 and a doctor has ever said the words creatinine, swollen feet, high blood pressure, or you're getting up too often at night to use the bathroom, then stay with me for the next few minutes, because this could be one of the most useful videos you watch all year. Let's be clear about something right away. This is not an attack on milk. Milk isn't the villain here. The real question is far more specific than that, and it's a question almost nobody asks at the grocery store. Is the milk in your hand actually built for kidneys that are no longer working at full strength? Because regular cow's milk, the kind most of us grew up drinking, carries a fairly heavy load of phosphorus, potassium, and animal protein. When you're 25 and your kidneys are functioning like a brand new engine, that load barely registers. But kidneys age, just like knees, eyes, and everything else. And once filtering capacity starts to slip, even ordinary foods can start to feel like extra homework for an organ that's already tired. Here's what makes this especially tricky. Kidney strain doesn't announce itself. There's no alarm bell, no sudden pain, no dramatic symptom that sends you running to the doctor. It's silent. It creeps. You feel completely normal, right up until a routine blood test comes back and your doctor points at a number and says your creatinine has crept upward. Suddenly, you're being told to watch your potassium, watch your phosphorus, watch your sodium, and you're left wondering what on earth you did wrong. And more often than not, nobody ever mentioned the glass of milk sitting on your breakfast table every single morning. So here's the good news, and I mean genuinely good news. You almost certainly don't have to give up milk. You just have to get smarter about which milk earns a place in your daily routine. Today, we're going to walk through 3 plant-based milks that tend to be far gentler on aging kidneys than standard cow's milk, why they work the way they do, and just as important, the sneaky ingredient trick that food companies use that can quietly undo all of these benefits if you're not paying attention. Stick around until the end, because I'll also hand you a simple 7-day plan. You can start tomorrow morning, no extreme diet required. Before we go any further, one honest disclaimer. No milk on this list cures kidney disease. No single beverage will drop your creatinine overnight. And nothing here replaces your doctor or a renal dietitian. And what we're talking about is something smaller and, frankly, more realistic. Reducing the daily burden on kidneys that are already working overtime. One modest, sustainable choice at a time. Sometimes health isn't about a dramatic overhaul. It's about swapping one habit for a slightly better version of itself and letting that add up over months and years. All right, let's get into it. We'll start at number 3 and count our way up to the milk that might surprise you the most. Number 3 on our list is unsweetened cashew milk. And I know the first reaction some of you are having. Cashews are nuts. Nuts have protein and minerals. So how could that possibly be gentler than milk? It's a completely fair question, and the answer comes down to something most of us were never taught to look for. It's not where a food comes from that matters most for kidney health. It's what's actually inside it, gram for gram. Phosphorus, potassium, sodium, and protein. These 4 numbers are the real story, and unsweetened cashew milk tends to score noticeably better on most of them than dairy milk does. Let's start with phosphorus, because this one deserves real attention. Phosphorus is a mineral your body genuinely needs, and a healthy kidney handles it without breaking a sweat. But when kidney function declines, phosphorus can start accumulating in the bloodstream instead of being filtered out properly. That buildup doesn't just sit there quietly, it can throw off your body's entire mineral balance, pulling calcium out of your bones to compensate and putting extra strain on your blood vessels along the way. Cow's milk tends to carry a meaningfully higher phosphorus load than unsweetened cashew milk, and the plant-based phosphorus in cashew milk is generally absorbed less efficiently by the body than the phosphorus found in dairy or in manufactured food. Additives. Think of it like 2 different weights being handed to the same tired pair of hands. One is simply lighter to carry day after day. Next comes potassium, and this is a mineral that deserves respect, not fear, but definitely respect. When kidneys can't filter efficiently, potassium can build up in the blood, and unlike a lot of dietary concerns, elevated potassium doesn't just make you feel sluggish, it can interfere with your heart's rhythm. That's not something to take lightly. Cow's milk runs fairly high in potassium, while unsweetened cashew milk typically sits much lower, which can make daily meal planning noticeably less stressful for anyone tracking their intake. Then there's sodium, the quiet troublemaker behind swollen ankles, puffy mornings, and stubborn blood pressure numbers. High sodium causes the body to retain fluid, and that retained fluid doesn't just sit harmlessly, it raises blood pressure, and elevated blood pressure is itself one of the biggest accelerants of kidney decline. It becomes a loop, more sodium, more fluid, more pressure, more strain on the kidneys, which makes managing sodium even more important. Unsweetened cashew milk, when you pick the right carton, tends to be fairly low in sodium, making it a gentler addition to a kidney-conscious plate. There's a bonus here too, and it has to do with fat. Cashew milk often contains monounsaturated fats, the same family of heart-friendly fats found in olive oil, as opposed to the saturated fat content of whole dairy milk. Why does that matter for kidneys specifically? Because your heart and your kidneys are essentially roommates, sharing the same circulatory system. When one is under stress, the other feels it too. Better blood vessel health and steadier blood pressure tend to support kidney function over the long haul, even indirectly. And finally, protein. Cashew milk is typically low in protein, which matters for a specific group of people, those with kidney disease, who haven't started dialysis, and who've been told by their doctor to moderate protein intake. Every gram of protein your body processes creates waste that your kidneys then have to filter out. Choosing a lower protein beverage means you're not quietly using up part of your daily protein budget on a drink, leaving more room for protein sources your doctor actually wants you prioritizing. Now here's the part that genuinely matters more than everything I just told you. Not every carton labeled cashew milk on a grocery shelf is actually kidney friendly. Manufacturers routinely add ingredients like calcium phosphate, tricalcium phosphate, or dipotassium phosphate to boost the nutrition label and make the product look more impressive. For someone with healthy kidneys, added calcium sounds like a win. But for someone with reduced kidney function, these phosphate additives are absorbed by the body far more aggressively than natural plant-based phosphorus, which means a carton that looks perfectly healthy on the front can be working against you on the inside. So before anything goes into your cart, flip it around. Ignore the marketing on the front entirely. The words healthy, plant-based, calcium-rich are designed to sell, not to inform. The real answer is always in the ingredient list on the back. Look for unsweetened cashew milk with no added phosphate. And remember, the shorter that ingredient list, the safer your bet. And even with the right product in hand, moderation still applies. A cup a day is a reasonable starting point for many people. But if your recent labs came back abnormal, run it by your doctor or a renal dietitian first. If you thought cashew milk was already about as gentle as it gets, wait until we get to where. Number 2, because this one might be the biggest surprise on the entire list. Unsweetened rice milk rarely gets mentioned when people talk about milk alternatives. Almond milk, oat milk, and soy milk usually steal the spotlight. But if kidney health is genuinely your priority, rice milk deserves a much closer look. And the reason is refreshingly simple. It tends to be exceptionally light on minerals across the board. Think about the 3 numbers we've already been tracking: phosphorus, potassium, and sodium. As 3 separate bills your kidneys are asked to pay every single day. A healthy kidney handles those bills without blinking. But an aging kidney, one that's already operating below full capacity, starts to feel every single charge. Unsweetened rice milk generally runs low in phosphorus. And just like with cashew milk, the plant-derived phosphorus it contains tends to be absorbed less aggressively than phosphorus from dairy or additives. This matters more than people realize, because when phosphorus accumulates in the blood, your body starts pulling calcium out of your bones to try to restore balance, which, over years, can now leave bones more fragile at exactly the age when a fall becomes far more dangerous. For someone in their late 60s or 70s, that's not an abstract concern. Bone fragility, blood pressure, heart strain, and kidney function are never separate issues. They're all wired together, and lightening the phosphorus load is one small lever that touches several of them at once. Potassium tells a similar story. Rice milk typically runs considerably lower in potassium than cow's milk. Imagine cow's milk as a large invoice landing on your kidney's desk every morning, and rice milk as a much smaller one. Still a bill, but a far more manageable one. That distinction matters because potassium buildup is notoriously silent. Most people don't feel it creeping upward. They find out from a lab report, often after the number has already climbed higher than anyone would like. That's part of why doctors are so specific when they counsel patients about bananas, oranges, potatoes, tomatoes, and even coconut water. Potassium hides in places people don't expect, and your daily beverage is one of the easiest places to quietly correct course. Sodium, once again, tends to be low in unsweetened rice milk when you choose a clean product, which can support healthier blood pressure and reduce fluid retention. If you're someone who notices swelling around the ankles by evening, a puffier face in the mirror each morning, or the faint indentation socks leave behind on your skin by nightfall, small sodium reductions across your daily choices can genuinely add up over weeks and months. Rice milk also tends to be very low in protein, which again can be a real advantage for people in the earlier stages of kidney disease who've been advised to watch protein intake closely. There's a helpful way to picture this. Weakened kidneys behave a bit like an old coffee filter that's been used far too many times. It still technically works, but poor to many grounds through it, and it slows down, strains, and eventually clogs more easily than it used to. Choosing a naturally lower protein drink is one way to lighten that load without asking your kidneys to do anything dramatic. But, and this is important, rice milk has its own trap to watch for. A lot of the rice milk sitting on store shelves comes loaded with added sugar and flavorings, which is a real problem for blood sugar control. And diabetes happens to be one of the single leading causes of declining kidney function. So the rule stays consistent. Choose unsweetened rice milk, avoid anything fortified with extra phosphate additives, and always read the ingredient panel rather than trusting the front of the carton. If you spot phosphate, calcium phosphate, tricalcium phosphate, or dipotassium phosphate anywhere on that list, it's worth putting the carton back and looking for a cleaner option instead. Now, if you're still with me, we've arrived at number 1, and honestly, this might be the most interesting entry on the entire list, because it doesn't just go easy on the kidneys, it may actually offer something extra. Unsweetened flax milk rounds out our list, and while it shares the low phosphorus, low potassium, low sodium profile of the first 2 milks we discussed, it brings something different to the table. Alpha-linolenic acid, a plant-based omega-3 fatty acid. Omega-3s tend to come up constantly in conversations about heart health and inflammation, and for someone managing chronic kidney disease, that connection is worth paying attention to. Kidneys rarely fail because of one dramatic event. Far more often, they weaken gradually, almost like a wall, slowly absorbing moisture year after year until one day cracks simply appear where none seemed to exist before. Anything that may help calm chronic low-grade inflammation throughout the body is a reasonable piece to add to that bigger picture. Not a cure, not a fix, but a supporting piece within a broader lifestyle that includes lower sodium, better blood sugar management, consistent blood pressure control, proper medication use, and regular checkups. On the mineral front, unsweetened flax milk tends to run very low in phosphorus, provided it isn't fortified with phosphate additives, and it's often even lower in potassium than both cashew and rice milk, depending on the specific brand you choose, which can be genuinely helpful for anyone who needs to keep potassium intake on a tight leash. Sodium content also tends to stay low in simple, unfortified versions, aligning well with the broader goal of easing blood pressure and reducing fluid retention. And flax milk brings a few extra perks worth mentioning. It's typically nearly cholesterol-free, low in calories, and very low in protein, which again can genuinely help someone in the earlier stages of kidney disease who's been advised to watch their protein intake. But here's a critical exception that deserves its own spotlight, because getting this wrong could actually cause harm rather than prevent it. If you're already on dialysis, your protein needs are different, often higher, not lower, because dialysis itself removes protein from your body during treatment. So please don't hear low protein is better for kidneys, and apply that blanket rule to yourself if you're currently on dialysis. For anyone in that situation, every dietary decision should be made together with your doctor or renal dietitian, not based on a general video like this one. And just like the first 2 milks on this list, flax milk carries the exact same trap: phosphate additives. Manufacturers frequently add tricalcium phosphate to boost the calcium number on the label because Calcium Rich sells cartons. A shopper glancing at the front sees that phrase and assumes it's a win for bone health. But for someone managing weakened kidneys, that additive can undo much of the benefit the milk would otherwise offer. So the rule holds steady across all 3. No added sugar, no added phosphate, and the shorter the ingredient list, the better. If the back of the carton reads like a chemistry exam full of words you can't pronounce, that's usually your cue to put it back on the shelf and look elsewhere. So let's bring it all together. Unsweetened cashew milk tends to be gentler than cow's milk, generally lower in phosphorus and potassium, and when you pick the right brand, it may offer heart-friendly fats as a bonus. Unsweetened rice milk is refreshingly simple and typically very light across phosphorus, potassium, and sodium, making it an easy everyday option for anyone managing a kidney-conscious diet. And unsweetened flax milk doesn't just go easy on the kidneys, it brings plant-based omega-3s that may support inflammation control and blood vessel health on top of everything else. But if there's one single thread connecting all 3 of these choices, it's this: the specific carton you pick matters just as much as the type of milk you choose. Skip anything with added sugar, skip anything with added phosphate, and don't ever let the front of a package convince you a product is healthy. The truth is always printed on the back, in the ingredient list, waiting for you to actually read it. Because here's the real insight buried in all of this: meaningful change for aging kidneys rarely comes from some dramatic, extreme overhaul of your entire diet. It comes from small, repeatable decisions, the kind that seem almost too simple to matter on any single day, but compound quietly over weeks, months, and years. Swapping your morning milk is one of those decisions. It doesn't require willpower or sacrifice. It just requires awareness, and now you have it. If your creatinine has been creeping upward, if your doctor has ever mentioned early signs of reduced kidney function, or if you're keeping an eye on potassium, phosphorus, blood pressure, or blood sugar, please don't treat your daily beverage as an afterthought. You don't need to panic about any of this. Panic has never fixed a lab result. What actually helps is simply paying a little closer attention than you did yesterday. So before you go, here's a simple 7-day starting point. Nothing extreme, nothing uncomplicated, just a handful of gentle adjustments you can begin tomorrow morning. Instead of automatically reaching for or your usual carton of cow's milk, pick it up and flip it around first. Get in the habit of scanning for phosphate, calcium phosphate, tricalcium phosphate, or dipotassium phosphate. And if you spot those words, consider trying one of the 3 unsweetened options we covered today instead: cashew, rice, or flax, assuming your doctor hasn't given you any specific restrictions that say otherwise. Use a moderate amount rather than overdoing it, and pay attention to how your body responds over the following days. Keep breakfast simple, your kidney-friendlier glass of milk alongside a light meal that's lower in salt and sugar, rather than turning breakfast into a spread of pastries, sausage, and processed foods that quietly load your system with sodium. At lunch, glance at your plate before you eat. If roughly half is filled with kidney-appropriate vegetables, a small portion is simple starch, and one moderate section is protein based on your doctor's specific guidance. You're already doing better than eating on autopilot. At dinner, aim for something a little lighter, easing off heavily salted dishes, thick sauces, and processed foods, especially anything that leaves you feeling unusually thirsty overnight, since that thirst is often your body quietly signaling something about your sodium intake. Throughout the week, consider jotting down a few quick notes each day. Did your feet swell? Did you feel more tired than usual? Were you up more at night? Was your blood pressure steady? You don't need paragraphs. A couple of lines is plenty. Managing kidney health isn't about guessing your way through it. It's about observing patterns and adjusting in partnership with your doctor. And I want to say this as clearly and honestly as I can. Nothing in this video replaces medical advice. If you're living with kidney disease, diabetes, high blood pressure, if you take regular medication, if you're currently on dialysis, or if a doctor has ever told you that your creatinine, your estimated glomerular filtration rate, your potassium, or your phosphorus needs monitoring, please talk with your doctor or a renal dietitian before changing anything about your diet. Everybody is different. What works beautifully for one person may not be appropriate for another, and what's safe at one stage of kidney health may need to be limited at a different stage. The goal was never to hand you a rigid set of rules to follow blindly. It was to help you ask better questions and walk into your next appointment a little more informed than you were before. Getting older was never supposed to mean surrendering to weakness. Your body has carried you through decades of work, family, stress, setbacks, and difficult seasons, and what it needs from you now isn't fear. It's a little more kindness expressed through small, steady choices. A more suitable glass of milk in the morning, a meal with a bit less salt, a label actually read before the carton goes into your cart, an appointment kept instead of postponed. None of that is dramatic. All of it adds up. If this helped you look at your morning routine a little differently, share it with a parent, a spouse, a sibling, or a friend who's been dealing with high creatinine, rising blood pressure, or diabetes. It might be exactly the nudge they need before their next trip to the grocery store. And whatever stage of this journey you're on, remember that you don't have to overhaul everything today. You only need to make one choice that's a little better than the one you made yesterday. Take care of yourself and take a deep breath. You're doing better than you think.